What's up, college football addicts? A little bit of breaking news today as Clemson has filed against the ACC in Pickens County, South Carolina. This is something that we told you was coming. We tried to continue to be very consistent on. We tried to give some dates and some timelines around it. I was hearing late February, ended up being late March. I think this is something that Clemson has been working on for months. We heard the scuttlebutt. We heard the rumors that this was coming down the pike. And it is here. Clemson has officially filed against the ACC. Now, obviously, you know this, but this is the second lawsuit that the ACC faces, as Florida State has obviously filed as well. I'm going to talk about today what it means for Clemson, what it means for Florida State, what it means for the ACC, what it means for UNC, and other teams here in the conference. More lawsuits are still likely. The ACC will very likely answer this lawsuit with one of their own against Clemson and try to get a declaratory judgment, which we've talked about a ton on our FSU channel. You can go check out some of those videos if you're a Clemson fan, because your case is going to be very similar to ours. I'll link a playlist at the end in which we've spoken with an attorney a lot about just what the legal terms are, what they mean, not necessarily who's going to win, who's going to lose, but just what all of that means. I'll link that at the end of the video, so stay tuned. But this has been expected for quite a while. With the recent changes to the college football playoff and the different revenues that were agreed upon, with the different news that's come out about who voted to do this against Florida State and who voted to do that against Florida State, this is something we expected. And the recent changes in college football, to the playoff, to revenue, to NIL, all of those things cemented our belief that this would go down. And it's no surprise that Clemson is going after the ACC right now. They are clearly one of the most valuable brands within this conference. They're one of the most valuable brands in all of college football that's not already in the Big 10 and the SEC. You look at the most valuable brands outside of the Big 10 and SEC right now, who are you looking at? Well, you're looking at Notre Dame, you're looking at Florida State, and you're looking at Clemson. They're probably a clear top three, and I don't mean that to upset other people. North Carolina fans, I understand. Miami fans, I get it. You're right there. We're going to talk about you guys in just a moment, but this made sense from a Clemson perspective. Clemson is also one of the brands that is competing or trying to compete yearly for national championships. And they're at a point right now where, much like Florida State, they cannot do that in the ACC. Clemson's argument about keeping their media rights is probably the most intriguing thing about this lawsuit. If we take a look here at what they say, it says, in the grant of rights agreement, each member institution, as defined therein, granted the following rights to the conference. All rights, the rights necessary for the conference to perform the contractual obligations of the conference expressly set forth in the ESPN agreement, regardless of whether such member institution remains of the conference during the entirety of the term. Similarly, the grant of rights agreement provides that the grant of rights included the right to produce and distribute all events, such as member institutions, that are subject to the ESPN agreement. As explained more fully in paragraph 62 below, the phrase, regardless of whether such member institutions remain a member of the conference during the entirety of the term, does not mean that the ACC has rights to games played while an institution is not a member of the conference, because those games are not subject to ESPN agreements. Clemson is arguing that the grant of rights only applies to things covered under the ESPN agreement, which wouldn't apply if they left the conference. The ACC's own terminology on both the grant of rights and the media rights agreement limits the scope to the ESPN agreement, before contradicting itself and saying regardless of whether they are in the conference or not. This could be a vital misstep for the ACC. If a judge or any judge will agree with Clemson, the ACC is in a heck of a lot of trouble. They are fighting this battle congruent with Florida State, but from a little bit different angle than Florida State is. And if either one of them can win, the other will join the winning side. So if you're a Clemson fan, here's what you need to know. The ACC will no longer count your vote in conference matters. That is done. They will sue you within the next couple of days. It will look very similar to what Florida State, the suit they filed against Florida State, looked like. And they will make sure that you are no longer able to vote on conference matters. We told you in a very recent video, the reason that Clemson and North Carolina had not filed suit yet was so that they could be part of those serious discussions. Almost a Trojan horse idea of being able to relay information to Florida State, being able to gather information for their own lawsuit, knowing all the while what they were going to do, but just not jumping the gun. Not that Florida State jumped the gun, but just not jumping the gun too early for their own case, their own situation. But going forward, your vote will no longer matter. And along with anyone else who files a suit against the ACC, you will then be suspended temporarily or fully once you get out from voting on conference matters. Be ready, Clemson fans, for the backlash. Be ready for what the media will say about you. They went after Florida State, and I don't believe that they'll go after U.S. Strong because I think they'll say, well, maybe Florida State wasn't wrong about this. Maybe Florida State did need to get out because Clemson here is doing the same thing. But the narrative around Florida State has been that they're whiners, that they're just not satisfied, that they're ruining college football, that they're all in it for money, that they don't care about the ACC. And guess what? At the end of the day, it comes down to competing and trying to win championships at places like Clemson and Florida State. And their leadership at both those universities does not believe that they can do that. And so that's why they've done what they've done today. But I will tell you, Florida State, Clemson, you're in this together. You know that they're going to back you up. You may hate each other in week 6 this year or week 5, whatever game you play. You're together on this. You're together in getting out of the conference. And I think there are more programs, universities, they're going to join you soon. If you're an FSU fan, it is nice to have an ally about this. Listen, there's no reason to give Clemson fans a hard time about how long their program waited to do this. Again, I think it was very strategic that they waited so long to do this. I think it was good to have them on the inside. I think it was good to see what the ACC was going to argue against Florida State, what the ACC was going to say to Florida State in their suits, in their declaratory judgments, in their different legal strategies. I think that was good for Clemson to see so that they could attack and they could catch the ACC in some faults and some lies and have a better chance of pursuing this. I think it's been good for Clemson to wait. And again, it doesn't really matter who wins between Clemson and Florida State. If Florida State was to lose and Clemson was to win, Florida State would just refile based on the same things that Clemson did. Precedent would be there, and Florida State would be out too. At the end of the day, the more the merrier. There is no reason to give them too hard of a time for waiting. It probably was smart. If you're a North Carolina fan, you are now on the clock. You are who everyone's looking to. Bubba Cunningham, this needs to be shared with him a million times. I don't care about subscribers. If you want to subscribe, great. If you want to like the video, great. If you want to share your comments, great. Bubba Cunningham should be tagged in this video 4,000 times if you're a North Carolina fan. If you want to get out of this conference too, you ought to be sharing this to your social media and tagging your AD in it. Not that he doesn't know, not that he's not aware, but the pressure needs to be put on. Clemson fans have been putting that pressure on their program, on their university, and look what we have here today. Miami, same thing. We don't get along on a lot of things. I've got another channel that trolls you guys a lot. I get it. We like to talk smack. That rivalry runs deep. It's 365 days a year. You need to be out of this conference too. As much as I'll crap on Miami or trash them or make fun of Mario Kart, whatever. Miami is a program that needs to be out of the ACC. You guys need to be sharing this to your social media. You guys need to apply the pressure. If you're an ACC fan, the full details of the recently signed college football playoff media deal are just now being leaked out. Once it becomes official, you're going to realize how screwed this conference is. Way beyond what people understand right now. This conference is a sinking ship. And Clemson just threw another cannonball into the side of it, and it is taking on more water. Jim Phillips will have a strongly worded letter that he will put out, much longer than anything he put out about an undefeated 13-0 team being left out of the playoff. But Jim Phillips will have something to say about this. But it just doesn't matter. His thoughts, his opinions, his words on this are not relevant. The ACC is dead, and his leadership is not fully to blame, but he's done nothing to help this conference at all. And teams and fans of different programs in this conference need to buck up pretty quickly. They need to apply pressure to their programs and their universities pretty quickly. Boosters, big-time donors of these programs need to make their universities aware we have to get out today. Clemson, Florida State, first up to the table, first up to bat, getting things done. What does UNC do? What does NC State do? What does Miami do? What do some of these other programs like Louisville, who certainly have a home, maybe in the Big 12, but certainly have a home somewhere? What do those programs do? I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Obviously, massive news. Clemson fans, if you want to know kind of what some of this lawsuit is going to look like, what some of the terminology means, what some of the different arguments are, I'm going to link a playlist right now that you can check out on our other channel. You may have seen some of the videos over there, but go through and check those out. Doug Rohan of Rohan Law is my guest over there that talks through some of this. It's a lot of content to take in. You're more than welcome to check it all out. Make sure that you're locked in here with the channel. We will continue to cover this as it is the biggest story in college football right now. I appreciate you guys for tuning in to College Football Addiction.